now, obviously, there's probably a lot of people that you admire in the industry, in the fantasy space. A lot of people that have probably influenced you quite a bit. If you had to name three right now, just off the top of your head, three people that you admire a ton in this space, who would that be?
So I think that the one misstep that people often take in any industry is thinking that someone who is successful before them, that you need to follow that exact path in order to be successful. But I think the opposite needs to happen. You need to see what they did right and see the things that you can take from them. Sure. But you need to create your own in order to really be a difference maker within whatever industry, whatever space you're doing, right? If you just do the same thing, then you're not going to be able to stand out. You're just going to be the lesser version of that person who already did that thing. So I think you got to give a shout out to Matthew Berry first, who without him, and I've been fortunate enough to have grown a relationship with him, since doing all this. And, without him having paved that path within the space, we would not be having this conversation today. Like realistically, I mean, he is the face of fantasy, and there will never be another Matthew Berry. There just will not be that. Right. So I think that he's been super influential for obvious reasons. I'm going to give a shout out, another one, to Sigmund Bloom. And the reason for that is because when I was starting out, he's a fellow. I grew up in Pittsburgh. He grew up in Pittsburgh. So he's a fellow Yinzer. So we had that connection with one another. But I remember distinctly, and he's a little bit older than me. He's like the father figure for some of us in the fantasy space, if you will. And I remember when I was starting out and I would get in those arguments that I was talking to you about, like on Twitter, he would be one of the people that I would argue with, that I would go back and forth with. And I then realized that when I approached my content, I needed to approach it in a way where how would someone like Sig poke holes in the arguments that I'm making? And because of the way that he approached things then, and I don't think he's as aggressive in talking like that on Twitter anymore. It used to be like the fantasy space on Twitter used to just be the Wild West with that kind of thing. Like people would just keep going back and forth. And again, the Rashad Jennings type conversations would go on for days. But someone like Bloom, I just respect so much because he does it in a way where he's not coming at you being rude. He's not coming at you being mean. He's genuinely interested in trying to make your and his process and understanding of something better. He's just a learner. That's the way that he is. And so it forced me with my analysis to always think, like, in the back of my head, okay, well, how would Bloom change this perspective? How would Bloom poke holes into this argument that I'm making? So that would be one. And then the last one, I'm just going to bucket two guys together because they're two of the best friends that I've made in the space, but Rich Hribar and Denny Carter. Denny, I do the Living the Stream podcast with. We've been doing that for about 9 years now. And it's just become sort of like this, it's like a cultish type show at this point where it's not even, we're not getting tons and tons of downloads. It's not, But we have this group of people that are the funniest, smartest. We have captured the greatest audience on the planet with that show. I kid you not. They are the best human beings on the planet that listen to that show. And without Denny is so witty, so funny, so much fun to talk to. And so doing that show is like talking to a brother, every week during the season. And then Rich Hribar, I've just gotten really, really tight with, and he's sort of my like sounding board with the analysis that I do. He's someone that if I have an idea, I bounce it off of him, vice versa. And we're able to just get better that way. So